Hi guys, I just recently posted something on my Tumblr that was like, give me a top 5 in my ask and I will respond with it, and an anonymous person just asked me what my top 5 favorite stories were, and I thought this was a little ambiguous, so I took it to mean the top 5 stories about myself that I love to tell people. So here we go. Okay, so number 5. God, this is really embarrassing. When I was in 2nd grade, I went to an elementary school that was church affiliated. So we had all of our major performances and plays in the chapel area, which was a legitimate church that people went to, but it was also part of the schools. Anyways, it was this Christmas performance and it was in the 2nd grade, and I was so nervous that I was gonna be late. Like, I didn't get a chance to pee beforehand, so instead, I ended up going into this performance, rushing on stage with the rest of my class, and as a result of the nervousness and the not being able to pee, I definitely pissed my pants on stage. And by pants, I mean my thin white tights that I was wearing with a short skirt. And thank God that I was in fact surrounded by the rest of my class, so the audience didn't really know, but it was still super embarrassing, and I can honestly say that I have peed in church, and not only in church, but on the church. And by on the church, I mean about 10 feet from the altar. So if I ever end up getting struck by lightning, y'all know why. Number 4, the story of how I came out to my mother. I had actually come out to my sister in high school, and my sister was really the only family member who knew about me being queer. So in my sophomore year of college, my sister actually ended up having this super awkward phone conversation with my mother, apparently, where my sister was like, so what would you do if she was a lesbian? And my mom was like, shh, your sister's not a lesbian. Because my mother and my parents and I, up until like this point in time, our conversation of sexuality had pretty much consisted of them yelling at me for talking to boys and one time getting eaten out in the child psychology section of a library. Anyways, so my sister was like, well, what if she was bi? And my mother was like, I don't know how to respond to that, whatever. So anyways, my sister was like, you should come out to her. And I was like, okay, fine. So the next time I saw my mother, she was actually driving me to a dentist appointment, and in the car, I decided that this is a great time to have a serious conversation, and I asked my mom about the conversations he had with my sister. And my mom was like, why? What are you saying? Because my mother is not a stupid woman. And I was like, well, I would identify as bisexual. I do like women. I have had romantic relationships with women. And my mother was a little confused at first as to what exactly bisexual meant. She, in fact, asked me how I could be in a committed relationship with my boyfriend if I wasn't completely satisfied with men. And to be honest, considering my boyfriend at the time, she had a point. But also not a point, because I was like, that's not what bisexual means. Bisexual does not mean I have to be with a man and a woman at all times. It means I could be with a man or a woman. My mother and I ended up, yelling at each other, and I ended up crying, and she was like, why are you crying? I don't understand why you're crying. And I said, I'm crying because I feel like you don't understand my sexuality, and you don't understand what I mean by who I am. And my mother started crying too. And my mother told me, you know what? Maybe I don't understand, but this is what I know. And she said, as your parent, the one thing that we could hope for, the best that we could hope for you, is for you to find somebody that loves and respects you as much as you love and respect them. And that is the most any parent could ever hope for. And that is what I want for you. My mom is awesome. Number 3, when my sister and I were little kids, we kind of ended up having to play with each other a lot. All of our friends that were in the neighborhood kind of moved away, and we spent a lot of time with each other because our parents were both working, and we were really huge nerds. So we ended up inventing this tag game called Serengeti because we were both obsessed with Nova and nature on PBS. Okay, so this is how Serengeti works. It's a 2-person tag game. You have one person who's the predator and one person's the prey. You start out 10 feet away from each other, and the person who's assigned the predator has to yell out an animal that is in fact a predator, like lion, for example. And then the person who's a prey hears that, and then they have to yell out the name of an animal that is a prey, but the prey has to make sense with the name that the predator said. So if you were a lion, you couldn't yell out orangutan because orangutans are not part of the same environment. You would have to yell out something like zebra or antelope. And then once you yell this out, you guys start running. And when you run and you come across any sort of water, be it like a really large puddle or a fountain or some sort of creek, you have to yell out aquatic things. And the predator has to yell out first, and the predator would have to yell out an aquatic animal once you pass the water thing. And then the prey has to yell out an aquatic prey that makes sense. So you would have to yell out great white shark and then harbor seal. And then once you get past the water, you have to yell out another predator and prey combination that is on land. And you keep going until the predator catches the prey. And then when you're done, you get 10 feet apart and you do the wiggle dance, which I guess I'm going to have to demonstrate for you guys because the wiggle dance is sort of awesome. Okay, so the wiggle dance is this. So you're 10 feet away, you do the wiggle dance, and then the game starts again, only you switch predator-prey roles. Number 2. So, as I said in the previous story, my family and like my sister and I, we were huge biology nerds. We loved animals, we loved watching these shows, and we actually spent a lot of time at the beach because that's where we lived. And we were at this small museum, I think it was in the Outer Banks, and it was one of those like interactive museum, like living museum places. This marine biologist woman was giving a presentation on like things you can find on the seashore and what they are, and she held up these things. The sort of colloquial term for them is mermaid purses. They're like these little, here, picture. This is a mermaid purse. So a mermaid purse is the egg sacs of like certain types of sharks or skates. And she was like, does anyone know what this is in the audience? And bear in mind, I am like 3 years old at the time, but I knew what this was because my entire family, like we were one of those nerdy families on the beach where we bring along the seashell book and like compare it and find out what it is. And so I raised my hand. And my parents were super excited because I was 3 years old and I was raising my hand at a museum thing. And of course, everybody was like, oh, that's so cute. We have to pick on the 3-year-old little Asian girl because this is adorable. And I was adorable. So the lady's like, the lady picks on me, of course. And she's like, oh, you, yes, little miss. Do you know what this is? And I swear to God, my parents have never gotten over the embarrassment. Instead of actually identifying it, I go, my teacher, Miss Jane, says dinosaurs used to exist. To this day, anytime we are at a talk or anything, my mother absolutely refuses to let me raise my hand. Okay, this is the number 1 story that I love telling people to explain how absolutely ridiculous my childhood was. So in elementary school, yes, the same elementary school where I peed in the church, we in 4th grade had to write little essays in honor of Martin Luther King Day, where we would write these little essays that were about like this big, and then we would put them on white paper doves and hang them in the hallway. Go elementary school. So I am the only Asian girl in my class, and I'm pretty sure I am in fact the only person of color in this class. And I end up writing about how Martin Luther King did a lot, sure, but racism still exists, and how people looked at me weirdly because I'm Asian, and how I felt like this was unfair. I felt like in the spirit of Martin Luther King Day, more should be done about the topic. Yes, I was in 4th grade and already a social justice warrior. It was awesome. I write this article, right? Or not article, really, like this 10-sentence paragraph. A day later, when the teacher was putting the essays in the hall, she stops me and privately talks to me. And my teacher, by the way, is a white woman. And this teacher tells me that I must rewrite my essay because it was not quite positive enough for the assignment. And really, the point of honoring Martin Luther King Day was talking about how awesome things are and how, like, sort of uplifting this message is. And I missed the point of Martin Luther King Day. And this was my first experience with white criticism. And to my 4th grade teacher, I would just like to say, fuck you. I did not miss the point of Martin Luther King Day, and a fourth grade woman of color, no, a fourth grade girl of color, because I was like 9 at the time, knew way more about race politics than you will ever know, despite the fact that you were 40 years older than me and had like 20 more years of education. So yeah, that's it. Hope you liked my video. I have other videos. They are located at youtube.com/lightspeedsound. And for more of my blog and more content and things I like and things I write, please visit lightspeedsound.tumblr.com.